thank you everybody for joining us once again. I'm Larry Vino. I'm the CTO here at Focus Technologies, and I'm joined today by my colleague and friend, our VP of Managed Services and Cloud Operations, Ahmed Fadili. Ahmed, thanks for joining me, buddy. Ahmed, being forefront of our managed services, working with all these customers, we made this very quick pivot to remote work. Can you talk a little bit about what you saw and how it affected our users?
Yeah, absolutely. Ever since the pandemic hit, we've seen a big shift to remote work, and companies couldn't move fast enough to move their employees over to remote capabilities. Given that, a lot of companies weren't ready for that, weren't ready to scale up and provide their users the capabilities to work remotely. We've seen everything from not having enough network capabilities, not having enough licenses for VPN, not having enough hardware to give their users, not having enough laptops to give their users. And that provided the security concerns where the users were home, working from their home computers, with also kids being home, having the same access to those laptops and desktops. It was a big concern. Having that ability to scale up and provide a secure network, a secure capability to the employees was definitely a big challenge for a lot of companies.
No, it's interesting, right? Because when the pandemic first hit and we were about, we'll call it 90 days in, we were talking to some of our distributors and they were saying that they were seeing a huge uptick in leasing quotes, right? Meaning that a lot of customers who, may have in the past been buying with capital or, moving towards cloud solutions had kind of been looking at, more traditional, predictable spending models. And then shortly after that, I think we saw a huge uptick in our cloud business in general. So, it's been interesting. You'll hear different people on different sides of the aisle talk to you about how this pushed all cloud. You have other people say it's pushing people back on premises. I think the fact of the matter is that, it's a hybrid world. It's always going to be a hybrid world from here on out. And you got to do what's best for your business and best for your business in the given application that you're looking to roll out or deploy. I mean, we've been in the VDI business a long time, right? And, we know that, to deploy a secure remote workforce, as we call it, is more than just VDI, right? As luck would have it, right as it hit the fan back in March, we were actually readying the latest addition to our secure remote workforce architecture. And that architecture kind of breaks down, what the environment needs to look like into four key areas, right, that they really need to be addressed. There's network security. That's things like, next generation firewalls. That could be, zero trust, VPN, secure cloud. Then it goes to secure endpoints, right? That's where we talk about endpoint protection, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit. Data protection. How do you protect the data sitting out there on those endpoints? And of course, some of the foundational stuff, MFA or single sign-on technologies. We then roll over to secure connectivity, whether you're wired or wireless. And finally, we get to the driving technology behind the solution. That's really unified workspaces, which is not just VDI, it's also application delivery, right? It's not enough to just provide you with an operating system. You also have to make sure that you handle those applications in such a way that it's easier now to manage from afar, right? Because in the past, people would come to the office and you could fix any issues, you could download new applications. Now with the distance and the precautions, right, you have to be able to do these things much more efficiently and remotely, right? You hear a big term in the industry called SASE, right? Secure Access Service Edge, right? That's certainly incorporated into our framework, all those technologies. And this architecture really allows you, regardless of where you choose to deploy it, back to my earlier point, private or public, you can enable your workforce to work securely, minimize that administrative impact I was talking about a second ago, or time delays, right, that lead to lost productivity. And that's all important stuff, right? I mean, better than most, as you've seen, a pretty good mix of VDI deployments this year. Some of them more traditional, some of them leveraging public cloud. Want to talk a little bit about your experience in that regard?
Absolutely, yeah. So the VDI comes in different flavors, we could say. The remote desktop services, as you know, the traditional Microsoft remote desktop services has been around for a very, very long time. So VDI is not something new. It's not until now that it has picked up because of the remote work demand. Um, at Focus, we treat the cloud as a strategy. It's not just a place where we migrate data or migrate users to. We have to understand the business goals, the application that they run, the users' activities, and the user behavior, because the architecture behind the VDI relies on that. You have users, or we have companies that use graphic intensive compute, others don't. Or you have users that really need a full desktop and others don't. They just need access to email or access to files. So architecting that environment is key because we have to look at the security aspect to it. How are we going to secure it? You mentioned that that with the traditional on premises, you have control of your environment. You have control of your data because it's behind a firewall, behind locked keys and locked doors, or it's on a colo behind a locked rack. But on the cloud, how is that shaped? How is that secure? In the cloud, in the public cloud, there's what is called the shared responsibility model. And that's when the cloud provider, whether it's Google, AWS, or Microsoft Azure, provides that shared responsibility model, meaning they will be responsible of everything under the hypervisor below, meaning the hardware. They will maintain it, they will make sure it's secure, they will make sure that it has the latest updates. But anything above the hypervisor, it's on the customer or on the IT folks. Having and managed services that understand that model, understand the hardening of that environment, keep that environment secure. And that is a key. We've seen a lot of companies, they try to move fast, but they lose sight of that big piece of the security. Again, with the VDI, comes with different flavors. VMware has VMware Horizon, where it provides a very highly scalable on-premise, and it could also be on the cloud as a hybrid model.
No, absolutely. Now, another thing that, our customers struggle with often is managing multiple vendors, right? And, when you think about VDI, we can try to focus just on the workspace piece of it and ignore the other stuff, but that certainly isn't going to deliver on what you really need to deliver, right? It's not going to provide the right experience, it's not going to protect your company. So we think about VMware, they've got a lot to offer in this space, right? So we think about all those different things that we call out in that framework that you have to consider when you deploy this, application delivery, endpoint protection, SD-WAN, right? VMware's put a lot of time and money, acquisitions like Carbon Black, for example, on the endpoint protection side. They've really put a lot of the functionality into the suite, if you will, or into a single vendor. And this really helps our customers simplify vendor management, but it also simplifies the solutions, right? Because as we often see, you may go out and buy 10, best of breed applications from 10 different manufacturers, but then because of the administrative burden, the training, the maintenance of those tools, you don't often get all of the value of those tools, right? So we talk to customers a lot about the fact that if they have an opportunity to get a lot of the functionality from as few manufacturers as possible, that's not a bad strategy because, our customers don't have, lots and lots of resources sitting around looking for stuff to do, right? So, we certainly help our customers in this regard, whether they, back to my earlier point and your point, whether they want to deploy it in their own data center more traditionally, or whether they want to deploy some of these same technologies out in the cloud. Can you talk a little bit about how we approach and help our customers with this, journey to a secure remote workforce?
Yeah, it starts with an assessment because moving to the cloud, it shifts the operation from a capital expenditure to more of an OpEx. So how is that going to shape out? How is the financial folks going to understand moving to the cloud and having that virtual desktop environment on the cloud, whether it's on AWS workspaces or Azure virtual desktop, having Horizon view from VMware, it does provide some of that flexibility because you can own your own environment. You could still have that CapEx And you could still virtualize and have the same efficiency for provisioning the clients and on a centralized kind of desktop management, which is a key to scaling up and scaling down. Now, when we talk about scaling up and scaling down, we have a lot of organizations that all of a sudden they have product they need to push out and they need to hire 10, 15 users right away. They want to maybe sometimes 100 users. How can we package that and have desktops available on the fly in seconds, apply certain applications to them, apply certain patches to them, and deploy them that they can be accessed from anywhere, from multiple locations. As we know, every single user comes with at least 2 or 3 devices. It's no longer just a desktop. It's now a tablet, a phone. Having that capability where the users can access the desktops from multiple locations using secure credentials is definitely a big key here. And with Horizon View, it's not just a VDI. So when we talk about a traditional virtual desktop, Horizon View provides you also with application publishing. So you can publish an application if a user doesn't need access to the entire full desktop environment. They can have access to only 1, 2 applications they need. They can access it through a web browser from anywhere, securely, obviously.
We see all these attempted attacks that are occurring, and unfortunately, we also see some of the successful ones when companies don't take the proper precautions and don't make sure they have a nice security foundation. And they're not public, right? They're private. They were kept out of the newspapers. So, can you talk a little bit about patching in the traditional sense and endpoint protection, and then basically how we can help our customers moving forward when they start looking at products like Horizon and the Carbon Black acquisition that's now folded into the VMware portfolio?
Sure, yeah. So when you install an environment, whether it's on the cloud, on premises, or hybrid, whether you're using Horizon View desktops or otherwise, it's not a set it and forget it type of thing. You have to have some sort of care to that environment. You have to patch it on a regular basis. And that is a big task. Nowadays, IT folks are very busy with remote work solutions, tickets with issues of employees working remotely, trying to keep the business and the operation going. But a lot of times they forget about that patching where the vendors, whether it's Microsoft, VMware, or Dell, or EMC, anybody who's providing the hardware and the software provides security updates and patching for that purpose to avoid issues like incidents that for viruses and things like that.
Well said. Well said. I have a friend in security who likes to say that the security industry is like playing Frogger. You're constantly trying to move forward with your organization without getting squished. And I couldn't agree with them more, right? It's not to your point, it's not a static environment. As quickly as we, close existing holes, new ones open, as quickly as we, update stuff, there's new holes and exploits found. So you just have to keep moving forward. So if you want to deploy VDI and you want to have the ultimate flexibility and you want to reduce some complexity, and you want to leverage cloud, the VMware product set is certainly a great choice. And in general, if you want to look at doing any of these things, we're here to help. As an expert who's been doing this for a couple decades, we have a lot of experience to bring to bear. And we have a framework we can follow to make sure that you don't run into some of the most common challenges that we've seen along the way. So with that, I'll say thanks for joining us. Ahmed, thank you very much. Enjoyed the chat, and we'll talk to everybody soon.